Welcome to the Lavish Leader, Unveiling Wisdom, a podcast by the Lavish Group. We are a community of powerful leaders and creators. Each one of us is on a different path and from a different background, but we all embody aspects of what it means to truly live a lavish life. And we are here to share our stories. I'm your host, Dr. Erin Martin. Welcome, everyone. Today, our guest is a rock star. We have Bozoma Saint John in the house, and I'm going to introduce her, and then we're going to start talking, and it's going to be just an amazing conversation. So for those of you who don't know, Bozoma Saint John is a Hall of Fame-inducted marketing executive, author, and entrepreneur who is worthy of the Harvard Business School case study written about her career titled Leading with Authenticity and Urgency. In February of this year, which is 2023, she published her memoir, The Urgent Life, with Viking Books. Her brilliant career has spanned various industries and includes roles as the global CMO of Netflix, the CMO of Endeavor, the CBO of Uber, head of marketing of Apple Music and iTunes, and head of music and entertainment marketing at PepsiCo. Her work has been lauded and awarded with notable recognition, including being inducted into the American Advertising Federation Hall of Fame, induction into the Billboard Women in Music Hall of Fame, and induction into the Marketing Hall of Fame. She's been included in the Fast Company's Most Creative People, the Hollywood Reporter's Women in Entertainment Power 100 list, and most recently crowned as the world's most influential CMO by Forbes. Her memoir, The Urgent Life, which I have right here, and it is brilliant and amazing, was published, as I said, just earlier this year. While her successful online tutorials, The Badass Workshop, teaches others to be their greatest selves. She says by far her greatest achievement is in raising her 14-year-old daughter, Lael. So here we go. Welcome, Bozoma.
Oh, thank you, Erin. I so appreciate that. By the way, we're now officially besties, so you can call me Boz. There's no need for the formality.
Okay. Thank you so much. Well, it is an honor and a privilege to have you here. You have an absolutely, not just an amazing story, but one that is inspirational and is timely. It's right on for where people are in their psyches and all of that with the world events and all of that going on. So I'm so excited to be talking with you about that here. I would love it if you would first share with us your story. Now, I know you've written this whole book on it, and it's amazing, and it tells so much of your story. But for those who have not read it, if you could kind of give us what are the big events and those important points to start off with?
Well, it's that's a big question. Well, you read off my resume. Interestingly enough, when I went to write my book, many publishers wanted me to write the how to be a marketing badass book, or how to succeed in corporate as a woman, or I don't know, any number of things that had to do with my career. And I felt that it was important for me to write about my personal story of tragedy and loss and survival, really, because it is actually what has made me who I am. It's I'm not who I am in spite of my losses, but because, it's I don't live a fearless life. I live an urgent life. It's fear is there, but it's my fear of not completing, not accomplishing, not living the biggest life that I can. And that is what drives me. So whether that is in my work, whether it's in my love as a mom, whether it is my love as a friend or a sister, or any number of roles and identities that I have, it is because of those personal things that have happened to me. So the death of my husband of cancer almost 10 years ago was a significant, I don't even know what the word is. How do you even describe that? I don't want to call it an event. The event sounds so little. It's a shadow, a life that I thought I had. And putting those things back together and putting my life back together is what has formed this imperfect yet urgent person, who is looking at you. But on top of that, it's all of us are dealing with such grief over many types of losses. And so it's like, for me, I think about whether it is the tragedy of losing my daughter on the day she was born or my boyfriend by suicide when I was in college. Like all of these things are so big. Any one of them is enough for you to sit down and not move anymore. It's like, I'm not even trying to pretend to be some sort of superhero at all. My book and my life, and I think my testimony is about my survival in joy and not necessarily my survival of these horrible tragedies that happened to me.
Right. I think that, like you said, any one of those things would be enough to just make you stop in your tracks. And many people would say they wouldn't blame you. They'd be like, listen, lay off her. She's been through a lot and it's going to take her some time to recover. 2 years ago in May, my best friend committed suicide. And that grief, that tragedy, the impetus for me to sit down and finally say, you know what? I've worked with enough women over the course of my career as a physician who have had trauma. It's time for me to sit down and write this. And I really consider being the ability to kind of recycle that adversity and recycle that trauma a way to help others is really my true definition of vitality, like being able to just keep all of it. Oftentimes when bad things happen, people want to kind of process it and forget about it or stuff it down and not think about it. But you were already a leader in your professional life when all of this was happening. And even in your book, you say you were just kind of trying to go on with life in the midst of these things, your husband being sick, and people didn't really know that that was happening until it got to the point where you couldn't hold it together anymore. You needed some support. What made you decide to tell your personal story? And did you always know it was going to be as impactful as it's been? And it's really kind of put you in a whole nother leadership position.
That's a really great question. I don't know that I thought it would be impactful. And that probably sounds strange. Actually, let me change that. I didn't know that it would resonate, that like impact is a whole nother thing. I think resonating is something I'm so surprised. I am surprised by how many people find themselves in my story. It's like, look, we all walk around this world. I certainly think I'm very unique, right? You're very unique. Everybody's unique. Like we all have our different paths. We have our different religions. We have our cultures. We have our race. We have our status, all these things that define us and make us unique. And I am very surprised, shocked, in fact, by how my story has resonated, how people tell me things about their own lives that aren't necessarily a mirror to mine, but they feel it. They feel the depths of something. They said, oh, well, this thing happened to me. And then even just you and I right now, you said 2 years ago, your best friend died by suicide. Well, my college boyfriend died by suicide 23 years ago. I'm sure that if we spent the next hour talking about our feelings around that, we would find so many connective points. And it doesn't even need to necessarily just be about whether or not you are a survivor of a loved one dying in that way, but the depth of the loss of someone that you felt that you could have saved, or maybe feel guilt over not seeing signs or not picking up the phone or not rushing over there or any number of things. Like we all have so many of those feelings. And so it doesn't have to be the exact same story, but I am surprised by how resonating it is for many people.
Definitely. I heard someone say just the other day that because of the way that our society has fractionated, we no longer live in tribes for the most part, that those rituals that we would normally have for grieving together as a community, we don't have those anymore. And so when a story comes out, such as yours, that makes somebody that resonates, there's an avenue then for people to have a little bit of that process in a community, which maybe they don't know, but you become part of that community because your story is bringing something up for them. And so collectively, they might be able to have a little bit of that experience, which evolutionarily we were made to have that, as grieving behind closed doors wasn't something that people did. And I think you're from Ghana, you kind of have some of that cultural experience. I wonder if you have thought about that in a way that relates to how you've told your story.
Yeah. I read something the other day, and I'm going to paraphrase, so I can't remember it exactly, but it was like something around when you meet empathetic people, you wonder what heartbreak they've survived in order to be so empathetic. And that's the way I feel now about our society as a whole in terms of like grieving or the process of grieving, which is that I have been there many times over. I know what it feels like, the sharpness of the moment, then the dullness of the moment, then the loneliness of the moment, and then the anger of the moment, like all of the feelings. And so, to your point about community and society, I find it now that I am much more proactive in my support of someone who is grieving than I would have been if I had not been grieving myself. That I no longer say things like, I'm here if you need me. It's like such a passive thing to say. What am I going to do? You know how many people said that to me over time? And just like when you're in that kind of depth of like sorrow and darkness, you are not reaching out to anybody. You feel like you're a burden to people. You don't want to make anybody else sad. You feel like you're just going to trouble them with your problems. And so you don't reach out. And so, of course, it's like the person who says, call me if you need me. They're doing their best to try and support you, but that is actually a very hollow statement. And so now the way that I proactively support is I say, look, I'm going to come over and do dishes unless you don't want me. Or I'm going to run to the grocery store, buy a bunch of things, okay? Some fruit, some beer, maybe, some bread. What's your favorite thing to eat? Ice cream? I'll get some ice cream, and I'm going to drop it over at your house. Or I'm going to come get the kids. I'm going to take them for 2 hours so that you have some time by yourself. Okay. Or do you need 3 hours? You want it to be an hour? Or do you want me to just come over and sit next to you on the couch? It's like the offering of my service in grief is what I've learned about how to better support as a society. Not just leave people alone to grieve by themselves, because that actually can turn them down a whole nother path. Unless, of course, they say, hey, look, I just need you to leave me alone. And then I respect that. And I'm like, okay, I'll check in with you tomorrow. You know what I mean? But it's like a certain action that we as surrounding friends and family can provide to the grieving person in a proactive way that we don't do now. And I think that is a learned behavior. That is not something that we were actually born with, as you said. It's like we as a society used to grieve together, be loud about it, allow for the community to bring over the casseroles and the things, not just on the day of the funeral, but for weeks after. But your neighbor can do that. And so we, as the virtual neighbors, as the people who are across town and not just next door where I can bring over that pie, it's like we have to be really proactive in our show of support.
I absolutely love that. While you're talking, I'm thinking about most of the people that listen to this podcast they're successful women who have achieved things. And I had a meeting the other day with a marketing person. And at the end of the meeting, she rattled off the things that she was going to do and when she was going to do them by. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get it to you by this time. And I sat there and I was like, that was so nice to hear that she had a plan for everything, even if I didn't know that it was what I needed. And we all can do that. We haven't made it to where we are by not being able to have deliverables, right? And so when you're saying that, it's like, wait a minute, if we can show up that way for our professional life, how much even probably more important is it for us to show up in our personal life that way, to offer specifics and when we're going to do them by? Because like you said, it's not even just that I'm not going to reach out to you when I'm in my grief. I'm not even thinking about like dinner. I'm going to have a piece of toast. Like I don't have an appetite. Like I don't know the things that I need. And I don't want to have to write a list of things to give out to everybody of what I might need. It's just not going to happen. So where we can really show up big in our lives for people is to, like you, I love that. Be proactive, be specific of what you're going to do and when you're going to do it, and just do it unless they say, I just want you to leave me alone. And then you come back and say, okay, but I'm going to check up to you tomorrow.
Exactly. If they say leave me alone, please don't go over there and sneak through the bushes. You know what I mean? Like, don't do that. But
Right.
it's like, I do remember my girlfriends who came over and did dishes when I couldn't get out of bed, who came and dressed my daughter, gave her a bath when I literally didn't want to brush my own teeth. It's like those things that we don't think about. That's like, would I have called somebody and said, hey, look, I can't seem to get out of bed. Do you think you could come over and give Layla a bath for me? I would have never called anyone to say that. Never. So I do like the idea of our proactive, specific deliverables that we can offer to our community and our friends.
Right. That sounds a little bit more sterile than what you were saying, but I'm trying to draw a parallel here. And that was what I was thinking of. How hard was it for you to receive those things?
Well, I mean, it's like now this is a therapy session. I mean, there's just so many things. I'm being the eldest daughter of my 4 girls in my family with a mother who was like, hey, look, you're going to do this, da, 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 and my dad who was like, yes, you're going to do it, blah, 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 blah. And then being in a world where you have to be a strong woman, it's like in the workplace and whatever, in every capacity, you got to be strong, means that you cannot ask for help.
That's exactly why I'm asking this question.
Yeah, it's like, isn't that what we're supposed to be? Like, we're supposed to be independent and like, we can do everything on our own and all that. And if you ask for help somehow, you're weak. I mean, that's like permeating from childhood into our careers. And so how would we ever be able to do that? So I'm so thankful that I have the kind of support and community who were forcefully helpful. Who didn't just say, like I said, they weren't passive with it, like, hey, can we help? It's like, no, they came over and said, we're going to do this for you. And after that experience, especially with my husband's death, it allowed me the space to be able to then ask for the help when I needed it because I already been shown it. It's like anything else in life. If you don't know that it exists, you don't know to even ask for it. And so the situation I was in forced me to have to ask for help once I had received it, once I understood what it felt like to hear the bathwater running that I didn't necessarily draw myself, but knowing that somebody was taking care of it. And so the next time where I was like, oh man, I can't even really contemplate what I'm going to eat for dinner, it was easy then to call the girlfriend who had brought over the dinner the other night and say, hey girl, do you think you could order me something? You know what I mean? Like that, it became easy. I'm not saying that it's like automatic now, but I would say that, again, my experiences as now a single mother, someone who is very active in my career, I travel a lot. I have to ask for help from my community. It's my only way to survive it. Yes, the only way that I can actually do all of this is to ask for the help so that I can put in the people who are going to help me achieve the thing I need to achieve. And that has been a much easier process for me once I received the help and could then mimic it by asking.
Right. There's this whole epidemic they talk about of women at the top feeling really lonely. And it sounds like that there's nobody who's going to make it through life without having some sort of tragedy or having to grieve something. Loss is part of our human experience. But how we allow our community to support us, whether that's friends, coworkers, family, whatever that is, it sounds like it's almost the opposite of lonely for you. You have circled the wagons. You have this tribe around you that even now, like you said, Peter died 10 years ago, but you have a 14-year-old daughter that you're raising and you're still being this global working woman. And you have people that support you in order for you to live this life. And as hard as it's been for you to, or it was in the past, as hard as it was for you to ask for help and even accept that help, you've learned that that's how life, that how it's working for you. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I think we have to be active in our own survival. We have to be aggressive in our own survival, meaning that we can't sit back and hope that somebody reaches out a hand or hope that somebody says, hey, look, I'd like to help you out, because everyone is busy, everyone is moving around. And that is also psychologically difficult because then we think, oh, everybody's too busy to help me. But like anything else, we were just talking about the deliverables, making it a plan. Like I use a lot of my career knowledge for my personal life. So it's like my calendar is not just a calendar full of the meetings and the presentations and the flights that I have to catch for work, but also full of the things I need to run my personal life. So I know that like if I have to take a flight that will mean that I can't take my daughter to school, I've got to ask somebody to come and do that for me. And so that means I've got to plan that and say, okay, cousin Tina, you to get over here, or spend the night on Monday night because Tuesday morning I've got to catch an early flight and I need you to take Lael to school. Like there is an action now that I am so used to having that I'm able to pull on different members of my community to help support that. And like anything else, I try not to overtax anyone. And I know what people's strengths and weaknesses are. Yeah, just like you would do when you build any team. It's like, I know the people in my life who will be great to take Lael shopping. I also know the people who will be great for me to call over when I need to have that wine and talk about what's going on. I know the people that I need to call when I have to complain about something and maybe like something in their experience can help me. We all know that. It's like the same way that you build your working is the same way that I build my personal team. And so using all of the strengths of my community, I'm able to then build a support system that is able to accelerate my own success in my personal life and then in my career.
Yes. I love how you just said that, accelerate my success. The reason I'm talking about this is because I work with so many high powered women who are trying to do it all themselves. And that leaves us all writing the edge of the envelope. And when one thing happens, when that one tragedy happens or whatever, it inevitably, when we're trying to do everything ourselves and we don't want to ask, we don't want to receive, and we don't allow that to happen, then the whole house falls down. So all of you out there who you're like, oh gosh, that's me, listen up and take this advice because it will save your life someday. Thank you so much for sharing that. Well, I get the impression that you have allowed yourself to grieve fully through things. And the reason that I want to talk about this a little bit is I've encountered so many people who are kind of what I say waiting to heal. They don't want to look at the hard stuff. Although we never get over some things, or we can resist that grieving and carry that with us for long periods of time. What did you do to allow yourself to grieve fully? And did you feel like you had an option?
I think different situations, because not everything is equal. So different situations have allowed me to grieve differently, where as a society, we respect the process of someone grieving when we think it's valid. It's like when my husband passed away, people gave me time. And like you said in the beginning, they would say, oh, she's just been through a hell of a year. Let her alone. Let her grieve. When I have grieved the end of a job, no one said, oh, give her time to recover. So it's like grief is different in different ways, and our allowance has changed a lot of things. I would say right now, as I sit in front of you, I am contemplating my retirement from corporate life. And that is its own death, its own grief. And I will have to allow myself the time to let go of a career that I have been very proud of, one that I've been very ambitious about, one that I've been very intentional about, and figure out, well, what comes next. And so there is, to some degree, an urgency for me to figure it out, to say, oh, okay. So I'm going to be done with that. Now, what do I do now? Because that's how we are, right? We're supposed to find the answer. We're supposed to know it right now. Now, the thing for me that really come into play has been the strength of my intuition, my gut, my feeling, my vibes, that I have leaned on that part of myself so long that in this current moment, as I am grieving the sort of the sunset of my corporate life, I am leaning on that so that I'm not rushing to find the next thing, to fill in the hole, to like pack it full of action so that I don't feel the loss. It's like, gosh, my whole life was built to succeed in this corporate machine. And if now I'm looking back and thinking, oh gosh, I guess that's over. Now what the hell do I do?
Right. It's a whole identity, right?
It's a whole identity. When people say like, oh, so what do you do? When you're just like, nothing. You know what I'm saying? Like, how do you answer that? And so it's become a whole nother process of trying to figure out, okay, well, I'm not that person anymore. So I got to let that go. And now I've got to figure out something else. But like, don't rush it. Don't rush it. Don't rush it. Let the time, you need to heal from these 25 years. So it's a very timely question that I'm in that process right now of giving myself the space and the time to heal.
Well, I just love what you just said, though, because when I ask the question, I'm thinking more about the past. And what you're talking about is things that are much more immediate. And it actually brings up a really great life is always changing. That's really the only thing that is for sure, right? Is that nothing's ever going to stay the same. And that's hard for us humans to kind of be okay with. And so there is almost a continual process of letting go. And when you're talking about leaving your career and that loss of identity, yeah, it's a process. When I left medicine, I was burnt out and I thought it was going to be the best thing. And when I faced it, looked at it in the face, it scared the crap out of me. I was like, wait a minute, who am I if I'm not? And when you say, when people ask me what you do, I would be like, well, I'm a doctor, kind of. Like, do I even say that I'm a doctor anymore? Because I'm not doing exactly what doctors normally do. It's a process that took a long time. And so I love what you're saying about it's actually just a reminder for us that healing is a continual process. And it's an interesting question to how we define healing. What does true healing look like to you? Because that's a word that's thrown around. Like, I got to heal. Let's heal. We're all trying to heal from something. We're trying to heal from trauma. We're trying to heal from loss. I think I can ask you what you think of true healing as being and where spirituality has come in, has led you or bolstered you in that. And I will offer, just to taint your response a little bit, when I speak with people about healing, I try to get people to remember, or maybe to even see for the first time, that we are inherently whole beings in the first place. And so this idea of healing is that we are broken and we need to somehow fix our brokenness. Healing is the revealing of the truth of who we are. That's how I define healing. And so that process of continually healing is the expansion of ourselves as we become more and more into who we truly are as the truth of us. And so that just totally probably tainted your response. But I think that it's a great avenue for us to maybe put some perspective for people who don't want to look at that, don't want to go there because it's hard and we're broken and how do you fix me and all of that. What would you say?
Wow, that is such a beautiful way to think of it. Well, I love that perspective. I really do. And you're right. I wouldn't say it tainting. I just think it's expanding the way I'm thinking about healing also. But I have considered what healing looks like for me. And I found it best.
Where has spirituality been a huge player for you?
Well, it's been really, really big because, it's part of my upbringing as well. It's like, well, I would say religion more than anything, but understanding of a higher being. And therefore, it's like, how do I communicate with, live in step with, like, sort of my higher purpose? And what does that mean is, for me as like an eternal being? How do I live in the world, getting to know myself better and better and better? And the way that I've been thinking about healing has been more in line with like the Japanese art form kintsugi, which is it's like the broken pieces of pottery that are put back together with precious metal, either gold or silver or something else that makes it what it was, but in a new way. That I find that I see my healing as those fissures. It's like, how can I make that the separation of what I have been come back together, but not like it was. It doesn't need to go back to normal. It doesn't need to be perfect. That like this new version that I am, somewhat to what you were saying, is an expanded version. It's somebody who has some scars, but somehow those scars are painted in gold or maybe glitter, a little sequins in there, that it's not all so bad. And so I'm a new version constantly. And the idea of my healing is not a past idea. I think it's a continual one. Because like when people say, oh, time heals all wounds or you'll get over it. Like, what are you even talking about? It's like I am a new being because of these things. It's like I'm a better friend. I'm a better executive. I'm a better mother. I'm a better sister. I'm a better human neighbor, all of the things because of the things I've gone through, because of my kintsugi of myself and of my spirit. God who is helping to guide and expand and all those things. I am better because of all of that. And so my healing is the understanding of that the things that have come to splinter me and have broken me are actually forming me into a new, better, more expansive human. And so therefore I'm able to be grateful for the experiences instead of resentful.
Yes. That's so perfect. Because I get the impression that you like who you are. Like, and I feel the same way about myself. Like, you know what? I kind of like who I am. And so all of those things that have happened to me that make me who I am, how can I not be grateful for them? I must have some sort of reverence and gratefulness for those things because they were the coloring book of my life. Right. So it's beautiful.
Yeah. And you know what? It's so interesting. I had a friend the other day, girl, we don't have the time to really get into this, but it's like love after loss is a whole nother thing that we should talk about at some point. And recently I'm working through heartbreak, which it's such an interesting thing because we deal with all kinds of heartbreaks over time, right? But everyone feels somehow, of course, like special and painful and terrible, as if you've never felt it before, you know? And she and I were talking about it, and she told me that perhaps like some of this allows you the space to understand even the depth of your own heart, the depth of your own emotion, so that you're able to go even deeper next time. You can go, you can love even harder next time. And I think about that and I'm like, yes, when Peter and I, because we separated before he even got sick and then we reconciled through his illness. And I, in that process, was committed that should I have the privilege of loving again, of being in a marriage again, that I would love harder, that I would be even stronger, that I would be even better, that I would be even more vulnerable, all of the things. And so I am really thoughtful about how these experiences that we have allow us to be even more expanded as human beings and allows me to be an even better lover because I have suffered heartbreak in a way that makes me want to throw my whole body into it, not just sort of be afraid and say, oh, you know what? No, I've been hurt before, so I don't want to hurt again. No, I'm like, man, I'm going to love even harder. I'm going to go even tougher. I'm going to do all of that.
Yeah, I think that's the urgency that you talk about is a presence. It's not being fearless, like you said. It's not being fearless because we can stand, like, for instance, at the beginning of a relationship and be like, oh gosh, I've committed to being more open, being more vulnerable, loving harder. And yet we still have to say yes. I know this might not turn out how I want it to. And I'm still going to say yes to this experience. And whether that is a relationship or another professional opportunity or how you put yourself out, like you had to say yes to writing your story and being so vulnerable that putting it out where millions of people were going to read it. You have to say yes to that expansion because we can stay the same. We can stay in our little bubbles and with that kind of false sense of security and safety. That's all an illusion, anyways. So we could just say yes and have a really freaking time on the way.
Exactly. And we can expand. Like you said, I love the word that you use, expansion. I think that's a brilliant word. I love it because if we only looked at our life in that way, then we would be less afraid to try the new thing, to love again, to trust again, because perhaps like all of these experiences are just expanding us, making us richer, making us better, making us even more lovable. And so I want to look at the world that way. I want my perspective to be from that vantage point. That everything that has happened in my life, whether it is good or it is bad, it is devastating, it is triumphant, has been orchestrated to expand me, to make me even better. And yes, that's why I love myself so much. I'm a much more expansive person than I was 10 years ago, than I was 20 years ago. And I can't even imagine what I'm going to be 10 years from now. Girl, I cannot wait for that version of Bose. I'm like, yes, come on, girl. You know?
Oh, I just love that. I just get the visual of like standing on like the edge of a cliff somewhere, just being like arms out and just like expand, expand. Like we can will ourselves into our greatest version. And I just love that.
That's our whole exercise right now. I feel like everyone who's listening, we just need to like open our arms and just be like, I want to expand. That's our mantra. I want to expand, expand me, universe. Now, I don't necessarily want to cry all the time, universe, but expand me. You know what I'm saying? Help me get there. I just want to be a better version of myself.
Right. And not all expansion comes through loss, definitely. But this is the human experience. But they are human and they're imperfect and we hurt each other inadvertently sometimes, but it's part of that relationship. But that is the desire. It's that whatever it is, that expression that wants to come through us as us. I would love to talk about, you talked about intuition and how much that has played a part. Intuition is one of the main pillars of the Lavish framework that I work with women with. And I love talking about it. It's one of my superpowers as well. But if we talk about desire and intuition, you teach people like find their ability to access that intuition. I've had so many women who are like, can you teach me how? They're like, well, that's a hard thing to teach. Can you talk about how you've honed this, what I call our kind of divine GPS, and how have you honed that for yourself?
Yes. Well, I'm with you. It's like one of my favorite things. It's like when your intuition is talking to you or making you feel something, man, you're right. I feel like it's a superpower. I'm literally like, I have not been wrong yet when I have listened to my intuition. I haven't. Like it's almost scary. You're just like, oh my God. It literally is the map. And nobody else has access to it but you. What a beautiful thing. I kind of have looked at my intuition almost like as like a friend. And I do use the analogy where it's just like, look, if you had a girlfriend who you kept going to and saying, hey, like, what do you think about this thing? And she says, oh, that's terrible. And you were like, I don't think so. I'm going to go this way. And then you go back to her and you're just like, so what do you think about this other thing? She's like, I think you should do that. Then you're like, no, I'm going to do this instead. It's like every time you do that, she feels worse and worse and worse. Her voice is going to shrink more and more and more. And she's eventually not going to talk to you. That's the way I see my intuition. I'm like, I'm just continuing to give my intuition power. I'm continuing to trust it. And in so doing, I am reliant on that advice. And the thing about the intuition is that I feel like because it is mine, it is the most reliable source of guidance. It's like everybody else in the world who loves me, my parents, my sisters, my besties, my mentors, they can love me and give me advice, but they aren't in this life. They aren't in this body. They don't have the exact same path that I have. So how would they know how best to advise me? And so that comes into action for me a lot in that, like in my corporate career, and I've been very public about this, I don't ask anybody for advice on when I should leave, what job I should take, what I should do. I don't ask anybody for that advice. And that is a habit that I think many of us have not cultivated. And even when you think about like the pro and con list, here we are writing down these lists. Yeah, you know what? You're going to talk yourself into a bad idea or talk yourself out of a good one. That's what you're doing. Why not, instead of writing that down list, just get quiet and say, okay, what do I actually want? And most of the time, that's really scary to do because you know what you want. You just don't want to do it. And so your intuition is already speaking to you. You just don't want to do it. That's why you're over here writing a list. That's why you're over here calling your cousin and being like, girl, what do I do? It's like, no, you already know. You're just either looking for the affirmation that you should do that thing, or you're looking for somebody to tell you that's a bad idea, even though your intuition is telling you it's a good idea. And so I think the more that we give our intuition power, the stronger it becomes. I can't tell you how many times in my professional career, in my personal life, my intuition has come loud and clear, and it has never, ever, ever steered me wrong. I'm so committed to her. She's really kind of dope, actually.
Yes, I'm so with you. I love the words of wisdom for people in general. They get the message and they don't act on it. They talk themselves, they go back into their logical mind. And that's where we run afoul, usually.
Yes, exactly. We're over here like saying, well, that doesn't make sense. So let me not. But does magic make sense? No, it doesn't. Wouldn't you rather live a magical life than a logical life? I do. I want my life to be full of magic. I want it to be surprises and like serendipity and like these beautiful things that no one would have ever imagined. That's the life I want to live. And the only way to get that life is by also believing intuition that cannot be seen by other people because they don't have it. And so I am living a fully expansive, intuitive life because I want magic every day.
That is so beautiful. I have just like the most amazing visual of you right now, Bose. That standing on the edge of the cliff, there's like a glitter in the sky. You're like, expand me. And you're just like, I'm signed up for magic. Like, I'm signed up for this. And the serendipity and all of those things that it's like, just freaking surprise me. Let's go. It does sound magical. It's so beautiful. Oh, wow. You talk about authenticity and you also talk about living unapologetically. And I just love this word. It's a really potent way to show up for life. And what we're talking about right now just dovetails into this so perfectly. Where does authenticity and living unapologetically, where do they intersect? And how do they build on each other with that urgency that you speak about?
Yeah, where do they intersect? We use the word a lot, right? It feels like now a throwaway word like authenticity and unapologetic. People say that and it's like so casual of a thing, but it is actually very difficult to live those. And this is where, it's a little controversial because people are like, oh, why would you use this word? But I'm like, it is actually about being selfish. It's like you don't get to authentic, you don't get to unapologetic without being selfish. And selfish is not a bad word. It just means that I am centered in my life. I am centered in my life. And so another thing that we don't often talk about and we don't talk about honestly is how we put other people in front of us. And sometimes it sounds noble. I'm not even just talking about like work or, it's like we could probably see that and be like, oh no, I can't put work first. I have to put my family first. Well, really, should you? Should your partner come first? Or should your children come first? Or should you come first? And that becomes a little bit like, oh my God, like, I sound terrible if I say I come first. No, you don't. We have all suffered from being with people or experiencing people who have not put themselves first and therefore are resentful of the life that they have because it is a product of putting themselves last and they don't like it. And I refuse to live that life. And so my authenticity shows up in knowing that I am the most important person in my life. And so I am going to live my life as me, meaning that I am not going to be the kind of mother that you think I should be. I'm going to be the kind of mother I think I should be. I'm not going to be the kind of corporate executive that is expected of me in whoever wrote the rule book. I'm going to be the kind of corporate executive I think I should be. And without that unapologeticness of centering yourself in your own life, you do not show up authentically. It's not possible. And so that's where it intersects. It's like, I believe I am the most important person in my life. And as a result of that, I am a better mother. As a result of that, I am a better executive. As a result of that, I am a better friend because I'm showing up authentically as myself because I refuse to not be myself in my own life. And that is why I think that when we talk about authenticity and unapologeticness and people want to throw that around, I'm just going to look at you and say, but are you centered in your life? Are you coming first? If you're not, then you're not authentic and you're not unapologetic. So sit down, sis, until you are.
That's the best explanation of selfishness that I have heard in a long, long time.
No, thank you. I don't want that life. I don't want to turn around and then it's like I've been living this life that other people have deemed important and I don't like it. And by the way, I don't think it's doom and gloom. I think if you are listening to this right now and you are living in a life that you do not like, then I want you to recenter yourself in your life and change it. Put yourself first, unapologetically. Don't let anybody tell you that your joy should come after somebody else's. Your satisfaction should come after somebody else's. If you don't want to bake those cookies for the bake sale, don't do that. Go buy them. If you're not making enough money in your job, go ask for that raise today. Don't wait for the review in 3 months or whatever time it is that they said you're supposed to wait for it. Do it now. It's like center yourself. Make sure that you're living the life that you want. And therefore, you will be happier. You will be more joyful. You'll be more excited. You will feel the magic that we're talking about. You'll be effusive, the way that you see people who are truly joyful, regardless of the tragedies, regardless of the grief. I hope that that's what people feel of me, that I am effusive, that I am joyful because I choose to be, because I have centered myself in my life and I'm living exactly the life that I want without apology.
Yes, it is our choice. I mean, I love what you're saying. It's for no other reason than we choose it. And we may have many reasons not to choose it, right? But what you're saying is we choose it anyway. And that's been the example that you have given not only in your book, but in what you're saying right now. And I dare say in your life. So we are the creators. And for you, Bozoma, like to arrive at a place within yourself that's like, I am the most important person in my life, and I make no apologies for this. I just see you standing on like a precipice of a cliff. And like as you're standing in this place, you're like looking out on the horizon, and there is this expansiveness that is happening right before your eyes. And I'm literally just seeing this as we're sitting here talking. So I just wanted to share that with you.
I'm going to give you another title. I think you're now Reverend Dr. Erin Martin because you're preaching. Okay. I'm like, yes. Yeah. Like, hallelujah. I'm going to catch the spirit and start running around this room. What a huge compliment.
You know, these conversations are so powerful and magical, even, right? And I just love everything that you're saying because not only is it like truth, I know it's going to resonate with the people who are listening.
I know. We should just throw more glitter up. You know what I mean? It's like we're having such a good time.
Yeah. So, my next question for you is on a daily basis, like, what is it about you or practices that you have, but what nourishes you and keeps you expanding?
Well, I am endlessly curious about people, about life, about all kinds of things. I mean, I think it's why I'm in the career I'm in as a marketer, that I've always been so highly curious. And it's not necessarily that I'm a people person. I'm just interested in people. And so that keeps me nourished because it's not just about my immediate tribe who I am getting inputs from, but from a larger society and those who don't have the same experience as I do. I am endlessly curious about that. And so it keeps me nourished because I just think there's so much to understand and so much to learn and so much to gain from everyone that I don't hold anyone over somebody else. And so that keeps me humble to some degree on that. I feel like there's just so much out there that I don't know, that I'm unaware of, and that I want to expand on. Even as we talk about controversial topics or conflicts in the world, I want to get a better understanding of why that is. What drives people to say that or to behave this way? And I don't have judgment on it. I'm just curious as to why that is. Because there isn't a right and wrong. There isn't a right side, really. There are only experiences that drive people to act. And so I want to better understand that. And for me, that keeps me nourished and it continues to expand my mind. It certainly opens my heart and allows me also to grow as a human with the understanding that we are never alone and our experiences are never more important than somebody else's.
And my last but not least question for you is, Bozoma, what is the truth of you now?
It is such a difficult question because even with that context, I mean, I said before, like, I feel like I'm I'm at an inflection point in my life. And so the truth of that is that I feel like I'm standing both at a crossroads and at a precipice. So even to the visual that you explained, of seeing me on a cliff, I was like, ooh, this girl is psychic, because that's what the truth is. That's what it feels like, that I have reached yet another summit and I'm looking over the range of the peaks and the valleys of my life. And I can go north or I can go east, I can go south, I can go west, or maybe I can just sit down. But I am on the precipice of something. And it is exciting and it is terrifying and it is hopeful and it is a little sad. It is all of those things. Like, I have all of those feelings. And so if anything, the truth of me right now is that I feel like I'm at an inflection point.
Bozoma Saint John, thank you so much for being here. This has been an absolute expansive delight for me. And I am so grateful for your time, for your wisdom, for your vulnerability, and for your sharing. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, well, Reverend, I will now call you Reverend from now on. Thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation with you, to be filled this wonderful day. I am going to take the gems that you've even given me in this moment and use them as I move forward. So thank you very, very much. I enjoyed this so much.
The Lavish Leader, Unveiling Wisdom is brought to you by Dr. Erin Martin and the Lavish Group. To find out more about Dr. Erin and how you can create and embody a lavish life for yourself, visit thelavishgroup.com. And don't forget to search for Lavish Leader in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found, and click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at the Lavish Group, thanks for listening. And remember, you too can live a lavish life of fulfillment, beauty, and love.